Well, greetings, everyone, wherever you are, and welcome to Being Your Own CEO. This is a weekly success circle intended especially for solopreneurs. We get together because we enjoy each other's company and we like exchanging ideas and information, and we do lots of experimenting and overcoming the many changes that seem to happen to all of us. And as a warning, I do warn that my system seemed to want to do something this morning that I asked it not to do for 4 hours, but I really don't know what's going to happen. So if anything happens, you'll know it was a technological problem. So I think you will would like to know a lot more about what our approach is, and you can find our operating principles on the website page. And what else? Oh, my name is Lowell Ann, and I've been in business for a long time, helping people get where they want to go through coaching and consulting. So now our viewers would like to, no doubt, like to know who's in the green room with us this morning. So let me see. Bill, I believe you were the first one here this morning. So how would you like to start us off?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Bill Graham. I'm coming to you from Belize today. My website is billdoesbelize.com, where I share unbiased information, or what I refer to as the unbelievable truth, to help folks make an informed decision on moving to Belize. And I'll also be managing the comments today. So for the people that are joining us in the audience, please check in, let us know you're here, ask your questions, and comment on today's show. We'd love to hear from you.
Right on. Thank you. Thank you for doing that, Bill. I appreciate it. So
My
Fred,
pleasure.
How about you?
Hello, I'm Fred Jones. I'm located in Victoria, British Columbia on Vancouver Island. I'm involved with coaching young people. I have a website called ourfutureleaders.ca. And what we do is help them with their self-confidence and improve their communication skills, enabling them to make a big impact on the future world as it's changing very rapidly. So that's what I'm all about. That's my passion.
Yeah, it's a wonderful passion to have, Fred. So welcome here. So Nathan, what about you?
Yeah, my name is Nathan Siegel. I'm coming to you from the town of Mezcales in the state of Nayarit in Mexico. And what I've been doing for quite a while is working with a partner out of Australia, building a business where we help people recover from post-traumatic stress disorder in 5 hours or less of clock time. I know that sounds like a big claim. It actually is, but it's also, we can back it up. So anyway, that's what I'm into, and you can find more information about what we do at hamishbaston.com. I'll spell that H-A-M-I-S-H, Baston, BAYSTON.com.
Right on. Welcome here, Nathan.
Thanks, Paul.
And Paul, how about you?
How about me? My name is Paul Murray, and my company's TTG International Management, and we simply try to take ideas and turn them into profitable action. Where I'm located a block and a half from Lowland, and this is the only way we seem to get to meet each other these days, so I'm very happy to be here on Tuesdays.
You know what, Paul? It just occurred to me that I don't know what TTG stands for.
Well, it's an iteration of many businesses that originally started out as T to Green International Management, International Marketing, when we were back in the golf business. So we've just, the management company, we just shortened it down to TTG International Management.
You've been at this stuff for a long time, haven't you?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. We are going to get together for coffee one of these days.
Okay.
Right on. So, Roland, how about you?
Greetings, Roland from MinMax Media, and very happy to be joining from Southern California. We bring you the minimum you need for the maximum impact by sponsoring the DIY live streaming show and also Saturday morning Marketing Smarties show. So we're running a contest right now to give away a pretty big package for internet marketing, especially for newbies. And also this Saturday, we're interviewing I've been looking forward to this for 2.5 years. Maurice Evans will be our guest this Saturday, and we're going to interview him for the entire hour.
Oh, right on. So could you say something about who Maurice Evans is? I don't know who he is. Am I showing ignorance here or what?
No, not really, because you know how people are legends in their own mind. He's legends in his own sphere. And within the realm of the people who work with publicity and as a publicist, he's really one of the dynamic individuals.
I see.
He's been seen on ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox News, et cetera, and he helps people get maximum exposure. So he's really good at that. Plus, he's very much a teacher of communities and building communities.
Okay.
And
Enough, Roland. Enough. We'll wait and get it on Saturday. What about you, Tim? What's new with you?
I am Tim Longwell Art. I'm an oil paint artist, and we're coming to you from southeastern Oklahoma. And what we mainly do is we help others gain health and happiness through reigniting their creativity. And we also do commission paintings if someone has a special request.
Wow. Reigniting their creativity. I love that. I'll be really curious to see how you do that. That's going to be fun.
Well, the next one should be up sometime today.
Ooh.
Had some editing hassles, so it's a little late.
Okay. Welcome here, Tim. And Jay, you just got here in time for introductions.
Is this the part where I sell the steak knives? But wait, that's not all. You get a free set of steak knives absolutely free. Call 1-800. Sorry, I suffer from Casey Caseism. Hi, my name is Jay, and my company is Magi Studios, and we help people get started in the world of online marketing through coach, consulting, and training. Hailing from Victoria, British Columbia, where it's a sweltering 28 right now. Yeah. Only going to go up. We're going to max out in Vegas weather to about 31, 32 degrees of Vegas winter, I should say. So,
yeah.
Appreciate being here. Thank you very much.
Well, we like having you too.
And I do have a set of steak knives standing by.
Well, and I have yet to introduce our topic this morning.
Oh, okay. I guess I gave it away, huh?
So the title of our discussion is Selling Without Appearing Salesy. And I did use Paul's little phrase, I think, somewhere about not having sales breath. And somebody, I think it was Andrew, who came back with a giggle about that. But as I was thinking about selling this morning, I would venture to say that sales is probably the biggest challenge that most solopreneurs experience. I don't know of very many who feel very good about it. And as I thought about that some more, I suppose it has to do with the fact that many of us don't really appreciate being sold to, especially if it's something that's not relevant to who we are or what we do or what we need. And so I've noticed that some sales approaches can be based on trying to convince you that it's something that you do need. And sometimes we're not too sure that we are interested or need, and find it difficult to withdraw from that. So I know that I've got a few people in the room here who have some thoughts about sales. And I know I have a few people in the room who have lots of experience in sales. So let's open the floor. So what is it? Well, first of all, what does anybody have a reaction to my intro here about people not liking to be sold to? Oh,
I have a great story. International convention, San Francisco, large ballroom full of salespeople. The speaker is the head of marketing and sales for Marriott Hotels. He asks each person to take out a pen and their business card, and he says, I want to do a word association. And he asks, what's the first word that comes to your mind when I said salesman? People write it down, pass it up because there's a draw involved. About 5 minutes later, his assistant brings out a pile of business cards. One's very large and the other's very small. And he says, the large pile is all negative. Now, if that's the way you feel about selling, how can you be a good salesperson?
right.
And he gave advice. He said, most of you will never be good at sales, but you've been doing something all your life that you're really good at, and that's buying. Forget selling and concentrate on buying. Figure out how people buy your product and engage them that way. And that's been the best advice that I'd ever heard about sales. And whenever I had new salespeople, that's always the advice I gave them.
So forget about selling and concentrate on buying. We all have experience. So, when you say concentrate on buying, concentrate on why people buy?
Just there's a very simple path on buying. The simplest one, and it gets more complex the larger the product, but it's a very simple one. The first part of it is attention or awareness. The second part is trust. The next is want, then want now. And then there's the actual buy itself. And as you go through this process, you need to identify the people that are in that stage and try and just make it easy for them to go to the next stage, identify it and move them on. So it's really a very, very simple process. And then there's the secret sauce at the end that everybody forgets about. And that's called echo. And everybody's so busy trying to fill their pipeline with new people that they forget to look after their customers and to try and encourage them to be great spokespeople for you, or as I like to call them, sneezers.
Okay. So boy,
so that's it.
That's a quick lesson in in the sales process.
I 100% agree with Paul in terms of learn how people buy. The psychology of purchasing, the knowledge of psychology of purchasing is such a valuable asset to anyone, regardless whether you're selling something or you just want to learn about human behavior. It is such a transparent way to see how people's patterns, buying patterns, can really mold who they are. And it gives you such leverage as a marketer or someone who wants to effectively talk to a group of people, right? Without selling anything, right? But if you want to get across the message that you're trying to get across, you need to learn the psychological effects of buying. And I've always, like, I'd say 4 years ago, that's where I really started to pick up on my own sales and my own patterns, was to learn, like, okay, well, I'm buying this. Why am I buying this? So you need to get into that mindset and get into the mind of the person who's buying, right? One person I would imagine that would be doing this, not so much selling, but getting into understanding people's behaviors, would be Fred with his youth product, because the mind of a youth or the mind of a teenager or a young entrepreneur, I think, is completely different than the mind of an adult. So being able to tap into that, I think, is a real quality and a real skill. So yeah, at any rate, yeah.
So that was going to be my question. How do you figure out the psychology of buying? And then you answered that by saying, asking yourself, why am I buying this or that or whatever? Are there other ways to discover the psychology of buying? Anybody else? No?
I could
put my
touch.
hand up.
Oh, there you go. Fred.
Can I put my hand up? I think it's all about qualification. You can't sell items to people that they don't need. You can try, but that's where the salesman gets the very bad reputation, the used car salesman and etc. And that's not what selling is about. Selling, in my impression, and I've always defined it as, you are a artist of sorts, because what you're doing is you're introducing positive change in someone's life. And if they don't need that positive change, you are not doing your job. You're selling them something they don't need. So the first objective is to find out what are their requirements, and that's called qualification. Things to people they don't need and don't want. Well, you can try, but that's the bad reputation. That's why most people, as Llewellyn said at the beginning, we have very bad impressions about the job of selling, because we've come across people who tried the high pressure techniques. They're not salesmen. Those are con artists, in my opinion. And there's too many of those. And sometimes we are ending up with those jobs when we're young, and we have some companies who do the high pressure selling, and they give you these terrible quote unquote sales jobs. That's not selling, that's conning. But selling really is finding out what their requirements are, and can I assist you? And sometimes you cannot. And if you are ethical, and you're probably say, you know what, I think there's somewhere else you could go. I know of another company or another organization. And that's what a good salesman does. They introduce positive change in someone's life. And those are the ones who give you referrals, etc. So it's pretty simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. You find out, you qualify by asking the right questions. What is it you need? And sometimes people don't know what they need, but you can ask the right questions and say, oh, this is something. Oh, yeah, that would help me. And if it's going to help them, a good salesman, and it's a very, very great occupation when you're helping people, because that's all you're doing, is helping them introduce something positive in their life. It might be a new car that they need, but it's one they need, not one that they don't need. You know, a sports car with a big family is not probably what they need, you know, and then they find out that, oh, that guy sold me something that doesn't work for me. So that's what it is. It's very simple, but not easy. So what can they do? So
when you mentioned qualification, yes, the first thing that jumped to my mind was this whole concept of cold calling. I mean, in a lot of sales material and a lot about marketing and all of that talks about cold calling, phoning people just to see if you can qualify them, I guess is what it's for. But usually they're
that's no. Sorry to interrupt you, and that's normally just organizations just trying to throw mud against the wall and hopefully something sticks. That's not really qualifying. There's a lot better ways to qualify. It's normally asking questions, or people put their hands up that they're interested. And sometimes it's even called educational marketing. You know, you can do that, and people say, "Oh, I'm interested in that information." For example, trying to sell houses to people who aren't going to buy them. But if you give the information and they're interested in that information, they're then qualifying themselves either sooner or later. They are interested in purchasing a house in that area because you've offered them that information. I think cold calling, I mean, when somebody calls me, I just say, why would I want to buy just because you called me? Sorry. If I put my hand up and I say I'm interested. So cold calling, yes, that again comes back to, it doesn't work very well. I know because I've tried it, in my sales time.
And a lot of us have our recipients, like your cell phone or your phone rings at supper time, still does.
But there are, if you get a list of qualified people, sometimes you can get qualified people, and then you can cold call them because they have put their hands up and said, I am interested, or they likely are. So that's where cold calling may work. But it's just calling every, Tom, Dick, and Harry, so to speak. That does not normally work. That is playing, this game. There are times when you can call a certain person because they have put their hand up, or you've read something about their business and you know that it's not unlikely there would be interest. And then you ask those qualifying questions just to see where they are at. So that's cold calling that could work, but it's not just calling everybody and, like these.
The robocalls.
You get these phone calls.
Yeah.
Yeah, those sort of things. So that's why they give it to a robo.
Yeah, right.
A robot to do it because it's just ridiculous. Yeah. Anyway,
it's interesting.
Qualifications really just asking the right questions to see if there is some potential interest, and it might not be now, it might be in the future. So you put them in your database and you then tell them you're still around just in case it's the right time now. So there's a lot of ways. It's not easy, rewarding to help people. Because they do have needs and you can supply those needs and change their life. It's a positive impression on them.
Well, and I guess you would need to firmly believe that what you're doing will change people's lives in order to be good at it. Yeah. So Roland, you waved a few minutes ago.
Yeah, I watched a really interesting TED Talk, I think it was, with Simon Sinek, and he made the really good point that people don't buy what you do or what you sell. People buy why you do it. And so he's implying that if the reason behind the person buying is not in alignment with what you're providing, there's not going to be the connection made. And furthermore, the concept of selling, it's not so much the selling of the product. I think that people buy from people they know, like, and trust. So you're really selling yourself. So unless you make the connection with the person and they know that you have their best interest in mind, you're probably not going to sell them too much because you drop into that percentage of people who are salesy, have sales breath. And that is an instant rejection from 80% or better. So it's better to work on the relationship. And then Fred nailed it, because the second step is, as opposed to trying to sell something to people, you educate them as to why the value of what you provide is there. And once they see the value, it's like, I want that's a value that I want. And that comes from the education on the industry and on your products.
So it's all about relationships to begin with, you're saying?
It really is. And if you focus on that, the rest is going to actually fall in place.
And now, Nathan, I saw a text that you put up, but I didn't get a chance to read it. So.
Oh, I was just saying that sometimes it takes an intro based on a chance encounter, but that's not entirely true in my case as of late. As you know, I've been doing a lot of social media posting and writing about different things to do with what I'm doing. And what's been happening is people are starting to reach back based on those posts. And I've had some really nice intros. One of those intros came from a friend of Roland's, Lynn Sanders, who looked at one of my posts one day and she said, "Hey, we need to talk." And got on the phone. She introduced me to a whole ton of people, and I then followed up with them. And my partner Hamish wound up doing a major session, couple sessions with one of these people, and managed to make some major changes in his life. And he's just going, "How do I introduce you? How do I?" You know, he was really, well, quite enamored by what happened. But he was going on holiday, and Hamish said, "Go on your holiday, and we'll talk when you get back." But it was just. It was really, really nice. The referral marketing, and like, I've been doing a lot of passive stuff in a sense. I haven't been necessarily knocking on doors, but I've been making posts and people are paying attention. It's been really interesting, the social media, and most of that interaction has been coming through Facebook rather than anywhere else.
Okay, so would you equate social networking with referral marketing or referral?
It can be, sure. I mean, that's what's been happening as of late. I was planning to do another post later on today where I get a lot more specific about the changes and just ask, you know, for referrals. I mean, the real key to a lot of this stuff, and I'm sure Paul and Jay and the others here will agree, is the call to action, asking for the referral, asking for whatever it is that you want, which so many people don't do. And then they wonder why things don't work.
So asking for referrals.
Yep.
And that is kind of the part of that qualification process that Fred talked about.
Yeah, it's like putting out there like what you have, not with the idea of trying to engage everybody, but just say, this is what we have, this is who it will benefit. And I'm learning with each day, you know, who is attracted. Like lately, the word resilience has been coming up a lot, and that's very powerful. And just different things have been showing up, and I'm just letting it happen, trying not to grab for it. I think that's where a lot of us get into trouble, me included, is if I try and grab it. But if I sit back and just put things out there and let things come in a different way, I find it works better. Just my opinion.
So almost somewhat passive then.
Yeah, I mean, I've learned a good chunk of this from Roland to do with putting stuff out there in a particular way, just helping people, giving information without trying to get anything back. And that in time, the right people will come. And I found from my own experience following Roland's instructions that it actually worked really well.
Right on.
Yep. Roland's a good teacher.
Well, that's a nice accolade, Roland. So, Paul, I mean, this whole qualification thing, where does that fit in your sales process? Is that just in the trust building, or how does that fit, or where does
hang on just okay. So if this is the buying process where you have awareness, trust, want now, and then the buy itself, you have to think of the tools that you're currently using. So what are you using? How do you, Lolan, make people aware?
Oh, partially doing this,
Okay.
having my website, and
Sure.
going to networking events and having conversations about business.
So I encourage anybody who's getting a business going to just look at this simple layout and just underneath aware, just start putting the things that you do at each step And once you know what you're doing at each step, then the next thing is to say, okay, how do I know that someone wants to move to the next step?
Right.
So how do I identify that, and how do I build that in? So when you're talking about people, the hardest one is is moving from want to want now. We know a lot of people want our stuff, but trying to identify that now is the time that they're going to do it. It's an ongoing process, and you have to build, and it works differently with whatever product or service that you're selling. But Jay is the guy who can talk to this about his ability to create websites that give him information that tell people where they are in this process. What does he call? I'm trying to get the word. Anyway,
these aren't the droids you're looking for.
Yeah. What's the thing at the beginning that you look at that's that shows what's happening? What do you call it? I should know this.
Is it the squeeze page? Is that what you mean?
A landing page.
No. When you're analyzing
needs analysis.
But there's a screen that you do brilliantly that you put up initially. It's the first thing you look at, and it shows the metrics of where you are on everything. There's a name for this, and it's anyway. We'll forget about that. But to me, it's simply identifying where each person is, and the power of Echo is really quite simple, because if this is the way people buy, if I give Echo to me, I'm looking for something. You say, Lolan, you know all of this stuff about Google. I'm looking for a certain app to do something, and she says, Paul, try this. That's just taken me through the awareness, the trust. I already want it, and to the want now. So that's how the Echo is so powerful. It cuts out all of this other stuff, and leads people to the process of the buy. So that's what I do. I just encourage people to identify where they are in this process. That's all.
Mm. And the way we can determine where people are is by asking good questions.
That's right. And you'll see them start to engage too. And as they engage, that if people are engaging with you, you must have built up trust, or they wouldn't be talking to you, right? And they must be interested in it, and they might be looking at wanting it. So now you've identified, and so you address them differently than you address someone who's just maybe out there looking. You can get deeper, you can ask more specific questions, and that will encourage them to talk back to you and help move them along the path. So it's trying to just keep it fairly simple is what I think is the easiest way to do it.
So Paul, I think you oh no, I guess it's stopped. No, you're sharing screen. I can see two of me.
Oh.
Yeah.
Am I still showing a sharing screen?
Yeah.
How do I turn that stupid thing off?
It's okay now.
Yeah. Is it okay now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Good.
I have a question for everyone, or at least a discussion point I'd like to ask, if that's okay, if no one else is in line.
Please do.
I want to know if I'd like to get the feedback and opinion of everyone if you think that the sales process is different between traditional offline marketing or offline sales process, if it's different than the online sales process. And if so, what are the different points? What exactly is different?
I have to think about that for a minute.
Can I chime in about that very briefly?
I think Tim had his hand first.
Okay, no problem.
I can say for a fact that it can be market relational depending on what you're offering. For example, with me dealing with art and creating art and offering it to the public and everything, there's a definite difference between public outreach, offline marketing, and online marketing. Because offline marketing, there's multiple avenues that you take that you have to market, and then they market for you. They're like galleries. If you're doing prints, then maybe a store or an interior decorator or whatever like that. You're going to be marketing one way, whereas if you're in person at an art show, you're going to be marketing differently. When you go online, it's a different process. It's actually longer. The relationship actually becomes more critical because in offline marketing with art, most of the time it's a spur of the moment purchase. They're someplace, and you're hoping you're at that same someplace where they're in the mood because they're there because they're at that want to buy point. And now they're just looking for the right to buy, the right item. Whereas online, you have to literally build the relationship to show them why they even want to be bothered listening to you or look at what you have.
So Tim, are you saying that you have to work harder at building or that you build a relationship online, and that you don't need to do it that much in face-to-face?
It's not as long a process. It's more spur of the moment, because in an offline situation, you're usually face-to-face with them, like at a car salesman. And if they're there, it's because they're interested. It's like they went to the car lot because they need it or want a car. They want a piece of art. It needs to fit into their budget, needs to fit into their space that they want to put this piece of art.
Okay, so by showing up, they've already
qualified themselves.
Yeah. And so what you're saying is that they don't necessarily qualify themselves online. Well, I guess when they do a search for certain topics, that's I mean, if they're following up a specific interest they might have, that is, yeah.
Well, the difference is also your audience at that point.
Yeah.
For the consumer. At an art show, maybe 100, 150 different artists, but they're different types of art. There'll be painting, and there'll be several different types of painting. There'll be sculptures and jewelry and so on like that. But just paintings alone, and you just type in oil paintings into a search engine, and it's mountainous, because everybody that can hold a paintbrush is online trying to push what they have. And so you have to help them see why they want to follow the path to you. And so in addition to SEO, there's a stronger need for that relationship to be built first for them to come in, because in the public venue or offline marketing, there's not a time period need of that relationship, because the way they buy is different than it would be buying art online.
And when and as you're talking about this, what jumped to my mind is I wonder if that is why Google created the Google collections, because people can then find a group or a collection that fits their interest. So I guess that would be similar to going to an art gallery.
That's good, similar, yes.
Yeah.
I don't know if I answered Jay's question the way he wanted it answered, or
specifically
enough. But like I know in my case with art, it's distinctly different then
I think you certainly opened up new questions with the art world, because I can't even fathom buying art online, or even how the complex process of buying art online. It blows me away to be able to. I always just assume that it's almost non-existent, because art is about enhancing the senses, so art could be something that you see, smell, touch, feel, whatever, right? And so selling a sculpture online, I think, would be just extremely difficult, or selling a painting. But then yet, I remember I actually bought a piece of art from a Tofino artist, Roy Henry Vickers, up in Tofino. And I bought that piece of art based on watching him tell a story. He does these stories on Fridays, these talks. He's a First Nations artist, and he talks about these experiences that he had. And I watched him on a live Instagram feed, and I was like, wow, this is such a great storyteller. And then I kind of ended up sauntering over to his online gallery, and I bought this beautiful piece of artwork that cost $800 and had it shipped to my house. So, I wasn't looking for it. That's the thing. And that was the really cool experience. And it just kind of dawned on me when we were talking about that. And so I think, is art harder to sell online? Absolutely. But it needs a different angle, like with any niche. Any niche is going to be more challenging, but I think if you kind of do this thing without being salesy, as what we're talking about, like there's a guy by the name of David Ogilvy. He's an old ad man from the 50s and 60s. And he actually, I remember a quote, and his quote is, "Factual advertising outsells flatulent puffery."
Say that again, please.
Factual advertising outsells flatulent puffery. So basically what he's saying is just pure facts, depending on the niche, will always outsell the steak knives. He did a Rolls Royce ad, and it says, "At 60 miles an hour, the loudest noise in this new Rolls Royce comes from the electric cloth." So, and it's totally true, So I mean, and that was a pure fact, right? It was just, and it's I love the way he writes. I absolutely love the way he writes. And if anyone has the chance, be sure to read something called "Confessions of an Advertising Man" by David Ogilvy. Great book. Absolutely fantastic book.
David Ogilvy.
Yep.
Okay. So, we've touched on a number of things, but I'm aware that, Nathan, you had something you wanted to, and I don't know, maybe we've moved on too far to make it work, but if not, go ahead.
Actually, the bit about selling art online, I would have to say it's actually easy to sell art online if you have the angle. And when I first started going to art school a number of years ago, I tied the artwork into my writing career to do with tutorials and writing about doing imagery and paintings and stuff like that. And I found it incredibly easy to sell my art online. What I would wind up doing is pitching an idea to an editor about a story to do with software or some sort of image that I wanted to create. And more often than not, I got an assignment. I did like hundreds of those. And at one point, I wrote a manual about Photoshop, started shopping it around. And I eventually did a software deal with the Corel Corporation, and I financed my entire Mexico trip, as well as a huge amount of artwork in this book. And so I got to talk about all these things about how you do stuff with photo manipulation using all this photography that I'd taken, plus a whole bunch of artwork. And it was a very successful thing. But I still do this, and I still pitch magazines on it. Like one of them out of the UK is called Creative Block. And at one point I pitched them and they pitched me back. I wound up writing 29 articles all about computer graphics and real fun stuff that I enjoyed doing. And I got paid quite nicely for it. So it is, my father would say, more than one way to skin a cat. And it's just, I stumbled into it. It wasn't something I planned, but it's just, my mentor taught me certain things. I followed his instructions and I got those results. But I mean, getting back to where we were before with what Tim was talking about, for me now, because of where I am, I can't do networking in person anymore. It all has to be online. And I really miss that personal connection, but I can't market because I'm a foreigner in Mexico. Can't do that anymore. So it does create certain restrictions, and there are times that I really miss that face-to-face, because in some ways I do better that way than online, and that's it.
So I've written down a couple of things that seem to have popped up. One of them is the use of visuals. So, I mean, getting back to Jay's question, certainly the online thing, there really does, there seems to me need to be a very great visual aspect.
Yeah, that's what happened with my articles. It evolved. I mean, I just did the odd visual, but then because software became more and more complex, I couldn't do that. And so what happened is I had to explain so much and use tons of screenshots. It got to the point where one of my editors said to me, it's like you're doing a slideshow when you write an article. And it wasn't an insult, but it was just the way things evolved. It had to be that way because technology has become so complicated. There was no other choice. Because if I didn't do that and I relied on text only, I would confuse the crap out of my audience. Yeah,
that's true. So visuals, I think, are really important. And the other piece that popped up for me somewhere is, I think it was in Jay's discussion, is the emotion. So when Jay, when you were talking about getting involved, you got involved with Roy Vickers through his story on a sort of an emotional level that put you in that mood that that Tim was talking about, being in the right sort of mood, and then finding something that you really enjoyed. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, it was fantastic. I know that Bill wanted to chime in. I know Paula wanted to chime in. Roland had a question. I think Bill's been patiently waiting, so I'd like to allow the floor to
and I'm sorry, Bill, I did
with his aggressive attitude raising his hand once. So
if you waved, I didn't see it.
I know, but bunch of A-type personalities in Google Hangout, right? How do you deal with that?
Well, it's actually been a couple of times, but I didn't want the audience to think I was swatting flies here in Belize. And I just wanted to share two very different times in my sales life, and back in the 80s, and actually I did this in Victoria for a year. I did charitable fundraising. And some of the people in Victoria might be aware of the Royal Canadian Legion's variety show, Shrine Circus, Canada One, stuff like that. And it's kind of funny in those days. Now, I know those days are 30 years ago and things have changed a lot. But our rule of sales was, first of all, 90% of all sales happen after the 5th rejection. So we taught people, even though people said no, you went back at them and gave them another reason to buy. Would I do that today? Probably not. It's a different time. And the other one was calls equal, because this was done at a boiler rooms or telephone rooms, was that calls equal pitches equal sales. So I remember doing this in Toronto for the Shrine Circus, and we had 96 telephones. Every night we would put 96 kids on the phone. Halfway through, we would replace the low 30 with a new 30. And the people who produced stayed. So was that real salesmanship? No. But I can tell you, in Edmonton, the first year we raised $120,000 for firefighters. The second year we raised 420,000, and by the third year our campaign was grossing over $1 million a year. So, but now today, would I do that? Probably not. Today, and I started my website not even with the intention of selling anything. My intention was just to inform people, because I realized there was a niche there where everything that was put out online was really sugar-coated. It was promoted by people who had a stake in selling Belize to unsuspecting foreigners. And now Jay and Paul probably could have taken my blog and started making money or started getting better responses in about 6 months. It took me a year and a half of constantly providing unbiased information. And I think I mentioned before the show, there's one expat forum I'm on. Last week, somebody made a comment and 2 or 3 people came back and said, well, I'm not sure if that's really true. Bill, with a question mark. Right. So after a year and a half, these people on the forum were now looking to me to be the judge and jury of whether the information was correct. And on top of all of that, without expecting it, you know, people will go on and say, well, I like this area of Belize. This is where you should move. You know, whereas my approach was always, you need to travel around. There's many different microclimates here. The culture is different in each place. You need to travel around and find out what resonates with you. And as a result of taking that approach, without selling anything or without marketing, I now get messages from people saying, do you offer that service? Well, right now I don't, but I can tell you pretty soon I will be.
Sure.
And that all came out of just sharing information with no real thought of any return. And it just happened naturally. So those were 2 extremely opposite sales experiences I've had in my lifetime. I can tell you the one that I'm experiencing now is far more rewarding than the calls equals pitches equals sales one. But
you're like so the Wolf of Young Street.
Yeah.
So Bill, I mean, what your current experience, the word that pops up for me is credibility. So you, over a period of time, you've built up a credibility so that now people look to you.
Exactly. Yeah, I guess some people call it authority. I mean, call it what you like, but I think it's just a matter of, the other word I heard earlier was persistence. Just be persistently helpful. And yeah, people that are looking for what you can offer them will reach out to me. Like I don't promote anything that I want to do. People are actually asking me to help them. So that skips a few steps in the qualification funnel, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. And it strikes me also that, well, maybe it's not unlike real life face-to-face. Building your credibility just takes time.
Yeah, exactly. You don't meet a friend somewhere and say, you know, well, if you're going to be successful, you probably don't. Or if you're going to make a friend, you probably don't say, hi, pleased to meet you. I'm Bill. And, oh, you live here. I live there. By the way, I sell real estate. Or, by the way, I got this great book that you need to read, or whatever. You know, it kind of goes back to what we talked about last week. For me, it's building those relationships and the authority or the credibility, like you said.
Right on. So we've identified a few critical pieces here. I think Roland, you were waving at one stage of the game. Did you lose track of what you wanted to say?
A couple times actually, but I think I'm coming back around. The question that I had for our group and for the audience is that, don't you feel, well, in my experience, what's happening online is always an augmentation of what we do in real life. And so the online communication and relationship building seems to want to emulate what we do in real life. That we can't walk up and knock on doors. We can't reach out and pass someone by and shake their hand or say, hi, my name is so-and-so. But we do similar things online as we do offline and in real life. And so my question to people is it really all that different, or are we just finding new ways and innovative ways to do what we've always done? And in my impression, the technology and the opportunity that we have online is massively coming close to the real life communication. I indeed was forced to go from total in real life stuff and very little online communication to almost 100% online. So I knew the two different worlds vividly. And to me, I love the online world.
Mm.
So my question is it so different really?
So I don't know what it was that you said that made me think of this, but I was remembering the door-to-door salesman. Do you remember the Fuller Brush man and the vacuum cleaner guy and the encyclopedia guys that used to just go door to door?
We had a McNess salesman that used to come by once a month and deliver stuff, and we used to always look forward to it. And we loved the guy. I mean, he was like an adopted grandfather.
So, I mean, I think your point though is that, and Bill actually said it as well. It just technology seems to be having an effect on the way that we do it, but in a kind of a way we're still using some of the same concepts, aren't we? We're just finding different ways to do it.
I think technology allows us to relate better. I mean, I think about 15 or 20 years ago, if you needed a product or a service, where did you go? You went to the yellow pages. You know, we didn't have the internet to search
What's
things.
that?
So then all of a sudden, well, then how do you pick somebody out of the yellow pages? Oh, well, a full page ad, I probably can't afford them. Oh, they've only got a one-line ad. Well, they're probably not a very big company. So typically you wanted to have a colored ad so people would see it, the business card size ad because that was in the middle, and then you picked the best ad, not necessarily the best contractor or not necessarily a contractor you could work with, but the one who had the best visual presence.
The shiniest object, yeah.
Yeah, or whatever appealed to you the most for whatever reason. Maybe it was their font. But now people, I think, get much more informed because they can go online. And they can research stuff. It's not like you have to go in and kick the tires on a car anymore and the salesman tells you the benefit of this car over that car. You can go online and figure out the CCs, you know, how many airbags, all of that stuff yourself, and actually make a decision on the car before you even go in and buy it. So now people are looking at the guy who facilitates buying as opposed to giving them a lot of information on what the car has. So I think that's a big way online has changed marketing.
I agree 100%. There are people now nowadays who will go to a store like a Best Buy or some store to go look at a specific product, pick it up, hold it, read the little thing on the box, put it down, go on their phone, and then buy it on Amazon right from their phone. It is and there are stores that are like they're saying like this sucks. They're blocking like they don't have internet in their store anymore, and you know, to try to prevent that from happening, because really it's killing brick and mortar businesses, you know, because large companies like Amazon are undercutting them based on whether it be cheaper pricing, you know, discrete shipping, you know, depending on what the product is, and so on and so forth. So where it's just more convenient, if you will. So
I wonder how many times if you call that up on your phone and you said to the salesman, you know, I can get this off of Amazon for, you know, $15 cheaper. Will they match that price?
Price match, yeah. Many times stores will only price match if they have a flyer. But yeah, I've tried that, and they said we can't do that because it's just online. It has to be a physical location, unfortunately. So at least with Best Buy and other electronic stuff. So, I mean, for me, it's great because I earn commissions when people buy from, you know, Amazon, right? So I'm not complaining, but I just feel bad for these people, you know, like who was it going into receivership? Was it Sears or the Bay or something like that? Sears, yeah. And you know, so Sears is you know, they're just facing this horrible situation, right? So it's horrible.
So Jay, what was the name of the store that was there before Best Buy?
Future Shop.
Future Shop. I went in there to buy a monitor and found one I liked and said, I'll buy it now. And they said, you can't buy it here. You have to order it online.
Well, there's the demise of Future Shop summed up.
I've run into that too. But you know, conversely, what we were just talking about with doing the research on something, a while ago I needed to buy a new cell phone. And because I'm really involved in tech stuff and reviews and so on, I knew that the place to go was Tom's Hardware, because that's one of the best places for sourcing stuff. And I read through a whole ton of reviews rather, and buyer's guides, because I knew what to look for, because I've written buyer's guides and I understand how things work. Mm-hmm. And I was able to go through it, and ultimately I've found this phone, which I bought for just under $200. It's the best smartphone I have ever had. I mean, the speaker in this thing is just unbelievable. I play it for people sometimes. They just go, wow, it's just incredible. But it was just from buyer's guides online, and because I'm in that world and I've been in it for so long, I knew where to go. I knew what to look for. So, you know,
I think reviews are the new salespeople.
Yeah, that's what I was.
There's only one big fly in the ointment with that, is that there are a lot of fake reviews out there. And if you don't know what you're looking at, you'll find reviews by affiliates that will only tell you what they want you to hear to get you to buy the product.
Hey, shh.
Am I doing a gentle poke there? Or maybe?
Yeah. Hey, what are you doing?
But the thing is, I've written tons of reviews myself, and as a reviewer, I've run into that problem too. It's like, how do you know what's real and what isn't? And the only way is by you have to really look very closely at what you're reading.
The only people that really are worried about that are other affiliate marketers writing reviews that are getting undercut by someone else's review, right?
I know, so. But I had it. I was coming from a different standpoint. I was being paid by the article, so I was completely unbiased in terms of the product, and I could say what I thought, and I did all the time. But
okay,
so Fred waving his hand.
Fred, all right, go ahead, Fred.
No, I just wanted to introduce one other element about sales, because we sort of gone off onto the marketing and so on. And this is finding your target market.
Yes.
This is key. Who are your audience? What is your tribe? That is the main thing. For example, when Nathan mentioned PTSD, there's an enormous amount of different types of PTSD, and you might find you go for one. Some of it might be military people, but others could be, trauma when you were a child, whatever it is. And then you find, well, those are the people that we can help the most, and those are the one, that's your target market. Or it could be in the art world as well. And Tim knows better than I do, people who can sell art online, and they have a certain target market they know, and they can then address and help those people again with a positive experience. That's an element that's very key. Nathan said, I just happened to fall into this. Well, that's perhaps another market that you could go for. If you fall into it and you start finding what, for example, in Belize, what Bill mentioned, you start saying, these are people that I can help, and they're a certain type of person. And that is so important. We can't sell our product to everyone. They are not our market, everyone. No. But a certain element, and to find our tribe, our target market is the real big secret, which we often ignore. We think, everybody's my customer. No. But in that particular area, can I help? And if you concentrate on finding your target market and then address it in an appropriate manner, you can be extremely successful compared to just say everyone. So that's something I just wanted to introduce into So,
and I think it's a really important one, Fred. Not only finding your target market, but really understanding them. Right, really getting to the real where their needs are, and needs and wants, of course, are entirely different. So
yeah, and that's one of the things I realized in Belize is that to be helpful, you have to realize that often people don't even know what questions to ask. I mean, with nothing to compare it to other than the assumptions they make in a first world country, people would never think to ask some of the questions that they need to ask. So,
well, that's another really interesting angle to for you to throw out, to suggest the questions that need to be asked, and then answer them, I guess.
So, Lolan, you just brought up something that I find interesting. You'll notice in that little diagram that I drew, the word needs is never there. And the reason for that is people don't buy what they need, they buy what they want. And this goes back to Nathan brought it up about emotion, and Jay just emphasized that twice. You know, he talked about Ogilvy, and by presenting the facts, facts don't sell anything unless you can relate that facts to a human experience, because you can show a person that your process or your system or whatever it is the best thing for them to do, but unless you can emotionally move them to do it, the biggest enemy you have out there is status quo, and it always has been. Mm-hmm. And Jay, in what you said, without the story, that you never would have got to the painting. And in Ogilvy's story that he told about the clock, it wasn't the fact that it was quiet, it was the visualization that we all got of being in a place so quiet that all you can hear is the ticking of a clock. So you've got to get that emotional click, or you're not going to get the sale.
Mm.
And I'd like to tie into that. One thing that I've learned in being in this whole PTSD market, it's been extremely difficult for me and my partner, because one of the things we've encountered is learning and understanding the language that these people are speaking and being able to get inside their heads. I mean, I've been in all sorts of different markets, but nothing like this. And so one of the things that I've been doing recently is we have a Facebook group, and I've been throwing out very targeted, focused questions. And that's something I learned from Andrew Warner, who's a great interviewer. And his thing would be, like, if you want to find out a specific piece of information, you ask a question, what's the number one, whatever it is? And so it's been really helping us in getting into the mindset of these people, because it's such a different dynamic, and it's something neither one of us has ever encountered before. And just trying to understand that mindset can be extremely challenging. But the key is and I would make a broad-based assumption on this, is if we want to be successful, we need to be able to speak to our target audience in their language.
Mm-hmm. Well, and yes, you can't connect with people emotionally unless you're able to speak in their language.
I wonder if that's accurate, or is it more accurate to say we need to connect with people that speak in our language?
I would say,
if you start trying to speak somebody else's language, I wonder how authentic you are in the end.
Well,
you know, I understand the idiosyncrasies of maybe some people use certain terms and that kind of thing, but I think we need to find an audience that relates to us more so than us trying to relate to the audience. I mean, I know that's kind of vague, but to be authentic, I think we need to find like-minded people rather than try and be what people want us to be.
Yeah, that isn't exactly what I meant. Part of what I'm talking about is building rapport. And if you want to build rapport, you need to speak and act in a particular way. Human beings, we do it all the time naturally, but sometimes when we wind up in an unfamiliar place, we're unable to connect with people without knowing why. is because we don't have the information about that environment that allows us to make that connection. And once we learn it, it's just my opinion,
Interesting. So we have covered a lot of different aspects of selling. Just before we close, because I see we're way past the hour here, and we lost Fred because he has another commitment that he had to go to. So of all of the concepts that we have covered for everyone, which do you think is the most important concept in terms of getting them to, I guess if I look at Paul's thing, to want it now, to buy it, what's the most important thing? What is it that turns them from that wanting it now and then buying?
Emotion.
Okay. So I would guess I would have guessed that as well. But I must say I'm going to go back and look at a few things that I purchased recently, and to see if I can pinpoint what was my emotion.
Yeah, the emotion is super key, because as Paul touched on it, people don't buy what they need, they buy what they want. And people don't buy logically, they use emotion first and justify it with logic afterwards, is what I read somewhere.
Yeah.
But we tend to buy based on our emotion.
That's a funny point for me, because when we moved to Belize looking for a simpler life and a healthier life, one of the conscious decisions my wife and I made was that when we go into a place now and you see the shiny object and I want to buy it, we always ask ourselves, do we want it or do we need it? And you would be surprised how many times we walk away without buying that object because we really only want it. We don't need it.
So, Lowell Ann, you touched on something really important. You said you're going to go back and look at what you do when you bought something. Mm-hmm. The problem is, if I asked you to walk, you already know how to do it, and you do it without thinking. That's how we buy. And so in order to be successful at having people buy from you, you've got to stop and look and listen and watch the buy and understand how it happens. And we do it so automatically. That's key, is that thinking about it each time you buy something. How did I get here and why did I do it?
Yes. And I think that's a really, really good piece of advice for us to end on. So I was going to give the signal, but it doesn't seem to fit the conversation this morning. So I'm going to blue box Bill, and I just want to say to everyone how much I enjoyed this conversation. I found it very stimulating, and you can, as viewers, you can see that our participants here have a lot to offer. So please do get in touch with them if you heard something that touched your emotion.
I'm the guy with the steak knives.
Jay's with the guy with the steak knives. Great. So thank you.
And at no time do his fingers leave his hands.
Right. Oh dear. So thank you all for joining me this morning. And this is Lowell Ann signing off for this morning.